Hi, welcome to So Crafty. My name is Miss Elizabeth and I'm a children's librarian at the Bees Ferry West Ashley Library. Today we're going to be making this fun little Yeti ice pack and we'll be learning the backstitch. The supplies that you'll need for this craft are felt, scissors, a sewing needle, thread, sewing pins, and rice. The pattern that I'm going to be using is available in the comments section, so if you'd like to print that one out, you're welcome to. Now the first thing we want to do is you're going to cut out your pattern. Now I've gone ahead and done that to save some time here. You're going to use the pattern then to cut out your flannel or felt pieces. So this is where you use those sewing pins. Oops. Got an extra one there. So all that you do is lay out the pattern onto the felt, and then I use the pins to hold it in place. That just makes it a lot easier on me to cut out the pattern to the right size and shape that we want. Otherwise, it could shift around and you end up with something that is not the intended shape. So now that I have that held in place, I can more easily cut out the pattern. Now the felt colors that I've chosen today, I have white for the body of my Yeti. I have a light blue that I've used for kind of like the tummy piece and for his face. And then a black felt for the eyes. So as you see, once we get it cut out, we can then remove the pins and we have our little shape. Okay, so once we finish cutting out our felt, we'll make sure we have everything we need. You have two of the body pieces. You have a face, a tummy, and then two eyes. Now when we start sewing this, we're going to start off by sewing all of the extra pieces that we have over here onto the front part of our Yeti. So I'll go ahead and put this one to the side and we'll go ahead and get started. And I'm going to get started by sewing the face on first, just because that'll help me with placement of everything else. And I'm going to pin the face on. Okay, so to sew this on, I'm going to use my white thread. I'll just cut it here. Now one thing I want to caution you about when you are needle. Cutting the length of your thread, you don't want it to be too long or else it'll make it a little bit easier for it to get tangled, and you might end up getting it so tangled and knotted up that you have to start over, and we don't want to do that. Now when I'm making these guys, I always like to double up. So I get the two ends of my thread, put them together, and then we're going to tie a knot. And I like to make the knot nice and thick because I want to make sure that I'm not going to be able to pull that knot through the fabric that I'm working with. we just tie it there. And then I'm going to knot it again, just as a precaution. And I try to make sure when I do that, that I hit the knot at the same point that I have the other. All right, so then pull that away. Now, as I mentioned earlier, with this pattern, we're going to use the back stitch. And the back stitch is just a very sturdy seam. So it's great for when you're doing something like this where you're gonna fill it with small items like rice for bean bags or for ice pack in this case. Because it just makes it nice and really close stitches so that you don't have to worry about things slipping out as much. So we're gonna start by, you want to knot on the back side so that it's not visible. And then get started. And as you can see, I'm going to try, when I do that one, go back in where the first one was, and the back stitch just creates a nice continuous seam. Okay, as we get to the end, I'm going to show you how to tie off. Because you don't want to just, once you finish, cut the thread and leave it like that, or else all of your work can come undone. So the way this works is you just go a little bit and you try and go just a tiny bit. You don't want to go through the front of the fabric, but enough that you get a nice hold. Bring it through. I'm going to try really hard not to get knotted with all this here. So that's most of the way through, and I'm going to try and get well. Let me try that again because I pulled it too tight. There we go. I'm actually going to put my finger there. There we go. And then you're going to put the needle back through and pull it tight. And then I'm going to do it one more time just to be careful and have that little bit of extra security. Then once you tie it off, you clip it and you're good. And so as you can see here, you have what looks like a continuous line of stitches, but if you look at the back, and I'll use one of my pens here to kind of point it out, it's a little hard to see, but you have stitches that are double the length of what we have on the front. And one thing I want to point out, as you can tell, my stitching is by no means perfect, but it doesn't mean that I can't have fun with the project. So if your stitches are all, different sizes, you can see I got started a little tighter and then I spread it out as I got going and a little more comfortable with it. It's okay. You just keep practicing and eventually you'll have nice even stitches. Now we're going to go ahead and sew on the rest of the features. So we'll go ahead and do the belly next. All right, now that we've attached the belly, we're going to add the facial features. Now for this, I've chosen to use black thread just so that it blends in. And because the eye is so small, I'm just going to hold it in as opposed to pinning it, because the pin might get in the way with it being so small. Oops. So I'm going to continue to use the back stitch. And as you can see, this can be very difficult to see when you're doing the black on the black. But the best part about that is it does cover up any mistakes that you make if you don't have it quite even. Now you don't have to switch over to the black, but I like keeping the consistency, or keeping it the black thread on the black material. So I'm gonna make my way around. One thing you might see is I am definitely, because it's a smaller piece, using a tighter stitch. All right, and we've gone all the way around. And I'm gonna go ahead and tie it off. Before I start the other one, you could actually, just work with the same one and go to the next one. But if you have a long gap, so if I were to bring it over here and start stitching right away, you might end up accidentally pulling it, and as you can see, it pulls the material. So I prefer just to start over so that I can make sure I keep everything even. As far as the stitching goes. Now one thing, and as you're working, so I went ahead and decided to use the little bit that I had left. This probably won't be enough for attaching the other eye, but it's okay. If you can see, there are little knots throughout where I misjudged how much thread I would need. It's not that big of a deal. Like I said, you don't want to get too long of a piece trying to make all the way around when you're doing it, because then it makes it easier for knots and tangles. So if you run out before you finish what you're sewing, you just tie it off, cut it, and then rethread your needle. It's not that big of a deal. You just have a few more knots to tie. And it looks like somehow my second little eye got a little too big. And if that happens, wasn't careful when I was cutting it, it's not too bad. You just pull out your scissors and you can make some adjustments to even it up. There we go. And we'll get started with this eye. All right, now that we've put all of the pieces on, the next addition that we're going to make is we're going to do a little bit of free stitching, because I'm going to add a mouth. Now you don't have to. This is just something that I decided to do with the one that I made to give him a little bit of a personality. And this is completely up to you how you want to do it. I gave him a little quirk up there because I kind of wanted to be smiling. And how you choose to do this is up to you. You can do like wiggly mouth where it goes kind of up and down. You can do like this guy where I have it going all the way across. But I'm kind of liking the way he looks with just his little half smile here, little smirk that we got going on. Now, one thing that I do like to do when I'm doing this, to give it a little more visibility, I do go over this a second time when I do the stitches, just to make it stand out a little bit more. And I kind of got off a little bit, so I'm going to see if I can make some adjustments there. There we are. Straighten his mouth up. Whoops. There we go. I said I got my thread a little too long, so I keep bumping things. And I'm being extra careful because I want to try and get it right on where I've done the other stitches. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and come over here a little bit because I want to make I don't really like how that looks here, and this is where you get to really just kind of play with it and make adjustments as you feel the need. So I'm just going to come in here, so I want to straighten that guy up. Oops. And there we have them. So now that I've got it, and you can see I have it very dark over here from going over it so many times. And as you can see, I've got this one long. I anticipated doing all the way across, but I really liked the way he looked. So I have a little bit more chances for getting tangles, which is why I say it's better to keep it shorter. And tie it off one more time. Also keeps you from wasting thread, which we don't want to do. All right, so there we have the front part of our Yeti ice pack. The next thing that we're going to do is get our other piece and line them up, and we're going to sew the front and back together. Okay, so to attach the front and the back, I'm going to shift that pen a little bit. I'm going to start up here, and I'm going to bring it in between the two pieces of felt that I'm sewing together, because like before, I want to hide all of my knots, and then bring it together and go ahead and start off that stitch. And then bring it over. And then we'll continue on around. As you can see, I'm going through both pieces so that they're attached together. Now, as you can see with this part, I am running out of thread a lot faster and not making near the progress around it. So, similar to how we started the knot, we're going to, we started off in there. We're going to bring this around and we're going to do our best to tie this off. You don't want to lose too much, but in between the two pieces of felt. That way, this part that we tie off isn't visible. All right. So we'll tie that off, get rid of that little excess. And then when we go to start again, I'm just going to tuck that in there so we don't have to worry about it poking out when we get started. I don't know about you, but whenever I try to tie thread like this, I feel like that I am all thumbs. I have a hard time getting it in there. All right, so just like when we got started, I'm going to push it up through in between the pieces. I'm going to work this stuff so that it's not going to be visible. And then you do have to be careful when you're sewing this for all the little limbs that you have sticking off. And then there we have it. And we just keep working our way around him. And like I said, I'll probably have to do that 3, maybe 4 times, just because of how much thread you use going all the way around him. Okay, so I've sewed all the way around except for I've left this gap here at the top because we want to leave a space so that we can fill it. Now when it comes time for this, if you have a funnel at home, you can use that. You do have to make sure that the bottom of the funnel is wide enough so that the rice that we're going to put in here doesn't get jammed up. The funnel that I had did not, so I just made one using a piece of paper that I rolled up and taped together. And that worked. And then I just carefully put some rice in there. And be super careful because I don't want to dump the rice. So when you're doing this yourself, you might want to use a spoon or something. And if that happens like that, where you get it, you just make a little adjustment because it's just gotten clogged up somewhere. So shift the angle that it's coming in. And I'm gonna feel, see how much. I still got, I'm gonna get a little more over here. Okay, oops. I got some caught in the paper, and if that happens, it's not that big of a deal, but I'm going to use my finger to kind of help spread that out, and we can kind of pick up the pieces that have spilled out and put them in, but I've still got space. You want to make sure you get them nice and filled in. Let me put that in. Probably got too much, we'll see. All right, see if we can work that down. All right, so we've got a good amount. Make sure it's gone into all of the limbs. Now you do want to give yourself, you don't want to fill it all the way to the top so that it's overflowing, because you do still have to sew up that last bit. So I've got my needle here. Let me get this out of my way so I don't accidentally end up knocking that to the floor and having a really big mess to clean up. And as we've done before, we'll just start off hiding that knot, and then we'll stitch up the rest. And we do want to be careful when you're doing this that you don't accidentally dump what you've put into the rice bag. So this part can be a little bit trickier than the rest because you are working to keep that rice in. I'm gonna do a little bit of an overlap here. This rice is a little on the heavy side. All right, so now that we have stitched them all the way around, we need to tie this one off. And this can get a little tricky because I'm gonna try and hide that knot like we've been doing. I'm gonna work around here. And I can see where my previous knot came out a little bit. Wasn't careful with that, but that's okay. We got enough of a little overhang here that we can tuck it in. But I'm just gonna try and work my knot here. In between the two pieces. And then we will clip it. And just like with the other, slide it in there. And here we have our little Yeti ice pack. Just put this in the freezer, let the rice get cool. And then if you fall and bump your knee or anything and you need an ice pack, this little guy will be ready to come help you. I hope you've enjoyed learning how to make our Yeti. Have a good day. Bye.